The signal came from the edge of known space, desperate, universal, and impossible to ignore. In every human language, across every channel, the message was the same. Help us. They're coming. We can't stop them. What began as a plea from the stars became humanity's first step into a galactic nightmare. Because the only thing worse than a monster is the thing that makes monsters necessary. In the end, it wasn't diplomacy or technology or unity that saved the galaxy. It was sacrifice. It was fire. And it was the terrifying will of a species the galaxy once feared, but would never underestimate again. Because when the stars cried for help, it was humanity that answered. A transmission burst through every channel. Radio, satellite, subspace. Translated into every human dialect with unnerving precision. Please, they're coming. We can't hold them back. For 72 hours, the signal echoed, pleading, urgent, terrifying. Panic spread like wildfire through Earth's power centers. Scientists, generals, world leaders convened in urgent, sleepless summits, trying to make sense of the first real alien contact. The coordinates traced back to a star cluster 50 light-years distant. And yet somehow the translation was flawless in every language known to man. This has to be manipulation, growled Marshal Draven, slamming a steel fist against the war table. No alien race should know our tongues this intimately. But Dr. Kalin, chief of Xenolinguistic Encryption, shook her head solemnly. There are layered codes, adaptive translators built into the message itself. It's not deception. It's a plea. And it's genuine. Above the Earth, the dreadnought Virion cruised along its routine orbital sweep. Commander Rian Voss studied the fragile blue arc of the world below, unaware that fate had already cast him into the center of a storm. The Virion was Earth's pride, a spearhead of deep space warfare, equipped with weapons forged in the crucible of humanity's long age of blood. Commander called his comms chief. High-priority transmission from High Command. Voss adjusted his jacket, stepping toward the projection array. The face of Fleet Admiral Rourke took form, stern, grizzled, and grave. You've seen the alien broadcast? Yes, sir. Everyone's seen it. We're responding. Virion has been chosen to make contact. Voss's pulse surged. First contact. The dream of generations. Now real. Why us, sir? We're a warship, not a peace envoy. Rourke's face tightened. Because this isn't a welcome. It's a warning. They're being hunted. If there's a threat, I want our sharpest blade out front. 3 days passed in a storm of preparation. Earth's once divided nations had spoken with one voice. Humanity would answer the call. On the bridge, Voss addressed his 400-strong crew. We don't know who they are. We don't know what's out there. But we do know someone is begging for help. And Earth has chosen to answer. He paused, gaze sweeping across every face. This mission will be perilous, but it will carve our place into the stars. The Virion ignited its prototype slipstream core. In a radiant blaze, it vanished from orbit, leaving behind only a whisper of light brighter than the sun. Weeks passed in silence. Then arrival. At the marked coordinates, a colossal structure floated in planetary orbit. It was no human design. Graceful arcs, luminous gardens inside crystalline shells. Beauty folded into engineering. We're receiving a hail, said the comms officer. The screen lit up, displaying a lithe, bioluminescent being with 4 arms, its gaze both weary and watchful. Its luminous eyes widened, translucent membranes fluttering in surprise. You truly came. The alien's voice resonated through the same omnilingual matrix that had decrypted their original cry for help. We didn't believe your species would answer. I'm Commander Rian Voss, he said firmly, of the Earth vessel Virion. We received your signal. The alien shuddered, its slender arms curling in a motion that looked like a mix of awe and unease. I am Envoy the Los of the Unity Accord. We broadcasted our distress in every direction, but we never imagined. It hesitated, swallowing something unspoken. Never imagined that Deathborn would come. Deathborn. Voss asked, his brow knitting. Phalos luminous, gaze dimmed with caution. Your homeworld is categorized as a lethal class sphere. Extreme gravity. Toxic biosphere. Apex-level predators. And your own species' violent tendencies. Your kind is spoken of only in warning cycles. Voss exchanged a glance with his bridge officers. Then why call on us? The Los folded its hands in a ritualistic motion, almost like supplication. Because what approaches is darker than anything, even you. We call it the Null Swarm. It leaves only absence in its wake. Our weapons do nothing. Our worlds fall silent. The docking array of the alien installation loomed like a cathedral of glass and light, engineered to welcome vessels from across the stars. Amidst the smooth, radiant hulls of alien craft, the Virion looked menacing, a black dagger among songbirds. Commander Voss led a team of 6 into the airlock. The Los stood waiting with a contingent of beings, each more alien than the last. Some hovered with no visible limbs. One coiled like a serpent of mist. Another shimmered like living gemstones. Welcome to Sanctum Arcadia, the Los said, keeping a careful distance. Please excuse our caution. Your biology is overwhelming to many. Voss gave a respectful nod. We understand. We come with purpose and with aid. The crystalline entity stepped forward, refracting the ambient light in ethereal bursts. I am First Radiant Glim, Speaker of the Council. Your ship, it is forged for battle. It's a frontline dreadnought, Voss replied, equipped for defense and retaliation. Gasps rippled through the alien assembly. A multi-eyed creature let out a faint chirp and collapsed, caught by its companions. The Los whispered, voice quaking, your entire vessel is designed to wage war. Voss didn't flinch. You summoned aid against extinction. What did you expect? Diplomats. Glim's form pulsed with uncertain hues. No, but perhaps scientists. Envoys. Not destroyers. Voss surveyed the elegant station, so clearly crafted for peace, not conflict. No armor. No weapons. Just gardens and light. They had never known war. Not as humans did. Take us to your strategic core, Voss said quietly. Let us see what we're facing. They entered the central dome, a chamber of light and data. Suspended above them, a map of the galaxy. Hundreds of green lights glowed softly. The green markers shimmered across the star map, each a world bound to the Accord. But now on the galactic rim, a crimson blot festered like a spreading infection. The Los pointed solemnly. That is where the Null Swarm began, beyond charted space. It doesn't think. It doesn't reason. It only consumes. Voss leaned closer to the shifting projection. How quickly is it spreading? It has erased 17 inhabited systems in a single cycle, Glim replied, voice brittle. Entire civilizations gone. Nothing left. Lieutenant Sarah Maddox, Voss's tactical lead, stepped forward. What about your defenses? Countermeasures. The aliens hesitated. Glances passed like shadows. We possess deterrence, the Los said slowly. Meant to repel aggression, not to fight extinction. Voss's jaw tightened. Show us what we're dealing with. The image morphed. Now, a serene world wreathed in blue oceans. But above it, a nightmare descended, an endless cloud, writhing and alive. Billions of biomechanical entities, each the size of a ground transport, poured from orbit. Trees crumbled. Beasts evaporated. Cities dissolved into dust. The swarm metabolizes organic matter, the Los explained, barely above a whisper. Everything it touches becomes fuel for replication. Our weapons only delay the inevitable. Silence fell among the humans, the kind of silence that weighs like stone. Then Voss turned to face the council. You asked for aid. You'll have it. But understand this. Humans come from a crucible. Our storms kill. Our wildlife hunts. Even our microbes wage war. We survive by claw and fire. The Los raised his arms in a spiraling motion of uncertainty. What does that mean, Commander? It means, Voss said, eyes steely, our response will be unlike anything you've seen. We won't hold the line. We'll burn the threat from existence. Gasps echoed. Several delegates recoiled. One let out a hiss like boiling liquid. You speak of annihilation? Glim asked, light within him strobing in alarm. I speak of survival, Voss said coldly. Yours and ours. Because if this swarm reaches far enough, Earth will fall too. The council withdrew into hurried whispers, their voices slipping beneath the translator's threshold. At last, the Los approached again. We have no alternative. We accept your aid. But know this, violence is alien to our culture. Your ways may terrify us. Voss gave a curt nod. Then prepare yourselves. I'll need every scrap of data, biology, patterns, vulnerabilities. And then, the Los asked. Then, Voss said, turning toward the exit, I contact Earth. We'll need reinforcements. As the humans vanished into the docking corridor, Glim leaned toward the Los. Have we traded one horror for another? These death-born, they carry war like breath. The Los watched their retreat, every footfall echoing through the polished hall. Perhaps, but the swarm leaves us no options. We must trust that fire can fight fire. Their hope, unspoken, was that the humans would leave when the threat was gone. Aboard the Virion, the biolab thrummed with quiet urgency. Dr. Kayla Mirren leaned over her scope, hands steady, eyes alight with curiosity as she examined preserved fragments of the null swarm collected by the Unity Accord. It had been 3 days since Commander Voss had relayed their findings to Earth. The reply came swiftly. Reinforcements were en route, 5 heavily armed warships and a dedicated science vessel, loaded with experts in xenobiological warfare. Incredible, Mirren murmured, adjusting the lens with care. This isn't like any known life form. Their cells, they're practically rewriting themselves in real time. Lieutenant Maddox stood behind her, arms crossed. Can you find a way to kill them? Mirren looked up, eyes gleaming with the thrill of challenge. Oh yes. Everything breaks under the right pressure. These things are linked, one mind across billions of bodies. But growing this fast? That leaves weaknesses. Meanwhile, on the command deck, Voss stood before the Los and Glim, the strategic holomap aglow before them. The swarm was spreading like wildfire, edging closer to the Unity's core systems. Those 3 systems need immediate evacuation, Voss said, pointing to clusters of green that were soon to vanish beneath the red tide. The Los trembled. 11 billion souls. We don't have the vessels for such an exodus. Then we hold the line, Voss replied, activating a different overlay. We position our fleet here at the Sinar Chasm. It's a gravitational bottleneck. They can't avoid it. Glim dimmed slightly, pulses slowing. You intend to confront them head-on? But our weapons are useless. Ours aren't, Voss said flatly. And Dr. Mirren believes she's found a way to cripple them from within. As if summoned by her name, Mirren entered the chamber, carrying a sealed canister that hissed softly in her grip. Commander, she said, placing it on the table. I've engineered a viral agent. It exploits a flaw in their biology, tears apart their regenerative systems. And it's selective. Other life forms remain unaffected. The Los recoiled from the container. You've designed a plague? A biological countermeasure, Mirren clarified, her voice calm but firm. Not indiscriminate. Not global. Purpose-built to dismantle the swarm. Glim's crystalline surface rippled with agitation. This defies our laws. Life, no matter how twisted, should not be undone by science. Voss's voice turned to iron. The swarm has already erased worlds. You can cling to your principles or survive. A long, brittle silence followed. Then the low spoke, barely audible. How would it be deployed? Mirren tapped the console. A simulation bloomed, missiles streaking toward an infected moon. We load the agent into delivery warheads. Upon impact, it disperses in a reactive mist. The virus spreads rapidly, shutting down cellular replication. They rot from within. They'll begin dying within hours, Mirren continued, her voice calm but electric with urgency. More critically, they'll infect others. The pathogen rides their own network against them. You speak of exterminating trillions, Glemm said, his crystalline tones laced with sorrow. They're consuming your galaxies, Maddox replied sharply. Would you rather feed them more lives? A sudden chime interrupted the debate. Commander, the comms officer said, Earth's fleet just dropped out of slipstream. General Thane requests immediate contact. Within hours, 6 human vessels formed a wall across the Sinar Chasm, massive warships anchoring the defense line. Behind them, the science vessel Arclight began synthesizing Mirren's pathogen by the ton. From high above, Accord representatives looked on in horrified awe. Humanity moved like a blade unsheathed, precise, unflinching, prepared. Crews armed warheads. Fighters were fueled. Launch bays lit up like constellations of fire. Inbound swarm in 12 hours. General Thane announced during the final command session. Our plan is straightforward. Hold the choke point. Distribute the bioagent. If Dr. Mirren is correct, we'll see collapse within days. The Los stepped forward, solemn as scripture. For 3 millennia, the Accord has lived without weapons. Today, we witness your ways, fearsome yet necessary. We offer no wisdom, only thanks. Voss nodded in return. Sometimes survival demands doing what terrifies us, envoy. 3 days later, the black tide arrived. The void shimmered with movement. The swarm descended like a storm of living metal. Human ships launched wave after wave of delivery missiles. Upon impact, pale clouds expanded, carriers of engineered death. For the first time since its inception, the null swarm recoiled. On the surface of Helion, a planet orbiting a red giant, the remnants of a once flourishing Accord colony now served as a battleground. Where gardens once grew, bunkers now stood. Evacuation craft clawed skyward. Above, Accord frigates provided escort. Below, Earth soldiers dug in. Lieutenant Kale Ryvar watched from the edge of the drop zone, armor battered from weeks of siege. Around him, 50 troops prepped gear and reloaded rifles, their movements methodical, habit born of countless wars. How many still waiting? Ryvar asked the Accord coordinator, a towering, mantis-like being named Trell. 6,000, Trell replied, antennae twitching. But our scanners, the swarm adapts. It's approaching from the northern ridge, faster than we projected. Ryvar's expression hardened. Mirren's virus had been a masterstroke, but the enemy wasn't static. It was learning. We'll hold the corridor, he said. Just make sure your people get out. Trell's multifaceted eyes reflected the amber light of the dying sun. With so few, it seems impossible. Ryvar primed his rifle, the hum of energy cells flaring. We're not built like you. Earth taught us to fight when losing was a guarantee. His radio crackled to life. The comm crackled with static before the words pierced through. Lieutenant, enemy movement. 5 miles out. Closing fast. Ryvar's grip tightened around his rifle. Positions. Get eyes on the advance. And remember, target the synapse clusters. They're still exposed. His squad spread along the shattered ridge overlooking the evacuation zone. The environment fought them at every step. The air was razor thin, gravity crushed the lungs, and the planet's blistering winds had already claimed 2 of their own. But the rest had adapted, because they had to. They're here, Sergeant Naira called from her high perch. Thousands, maybe more. Ryvar raised his field lenses. The horizon swelled with movement. A living tide of chitin and sinew poured across the rocks, flowing like molten flesh. "Wait for the signal," he said. "Don't fire until they breach the targeting line." Then silence shattered. The swarm hit the kill zone. Ryvar gave the cue. The ridge detonated into sound and fury. Explosive rounds lit up the enemy ranks. The front lines of the swarm buckled under the barrage, shredded by calculated firepower. Dozens fell with every volley, but for each slain, more surged behind. "They're adjusting," Naira shouted. "They're rotating formation." Ryvar watched as the mass reconfigured mid-advance, splitting into 3 coordinated arcs. One charged head-on, while the others flanked wide, racing toward the ridges. "That's new," he muttered. "They're adapting. Fast." "What now, sir?" asked a young trooper, panic crawling into his voice. Ryvar scanned the field. The rugged terrain offered an answer. 2 massive ravines carved into the plateau, natural choke points on both sides. "Naira, take your squad to the eastern cut. Detonate charges on my mark. Jackson, same on the west. Set your traps and dig in." The units broke away, disappearing into the ravines. Ryvar's main force held center, intensifying fire and baiting the swarm through the exposed corridor. It worked. The flanks curved inward, avoiding the gulches, driven straight into the funnel. When the timing was right, Ryvar gave the order. Twin eruptions thundered across the cliffs. Rock and debris collapsed into the ravines, crushing hundreds beneath and sealing the flanks. The rest of the force unleashed hellfire on the core column. 3 hours. That's how long they held. Steel against storm. Flesh against hunger. One by one, the civilian transports roared skyward. Smoke, blood, and fire blanketed the battlefield. Last transports airborne. Trell's voice crackled through the radio. "All civilians clear." Ryvar turned to his squad, bloodied, burning, breathless. "Fall back. Extraction inbound. Mission complete." As the gunships broke through the dust-filled sky, Ryvar took one last look back. The battlefield lay silent, unnervingly so. The swarm had halted its surge, clustering together in a pulsating mass. "They're pulling back," Naira said, disbelief in her voice. Ryvar kept his eyes locked on the horizon. "No," he muttered. "Not retreating. Evolving. Next time, they'll hit harder." On board the Unity Accord's command cruiser, Envoy Delos watched the battered human troops disembark. "How many did you lose?" he asked. Ryvar's armor clanked as he stepped down the ramp. 40%, he said, voice empty. "But we held." Delos performed a sacred gesture, arms weaving in reverence. "We've never witnessed sacrifice like this. Your people fight like no other." Ryvar removed his scorched helmet, his face streaked with blood and sweat. "That's why you called us, Envoy. Because sometimes survival means doing what no one else can." Aboard the science vessel Solace, Dr. Kayla Mirren hadn't slept in nearly 3 days. Her lab reeked of antiseptic and ozone, her eyes bleary as she studied the latest batch of swarm tissue under the scanner. What she saw chilled her. "They're adjusting faster than any organism I've ever encountered," she told Commander Voss during an emergency holo briefing. "The pathogen's down to 30% efficiency." Voss looked drained, weeks of fighting etched into his face. "We can't keep losing ground. Every fallback costs another system." General Thane's hologram flickered in. "We've found something, a central hive planet in the Vega sector. Scans confirm it's fully infested, possibly their primary spawning ground." Mirren turned, eyes sharpening. "If I can get samples from the source, I might be able to design a new counteragent, something they've never seen." Voss stared at the star map, deep in swarm-controlled space. "We'll need a full strike fleet to reach that far." "Then we'll send one," Thane said. "Commander Voss, you'll lead the incursion. The Accord will handle transport and logistics. Your mission, get Dr. Mirren in, get her out with viable specimens. The Los, who had listened quietly until now, stepped forward. We will guide you, but we cannot fight. Our vessels have no weapons. Our people no soldiers. Voss nodded once. Just carry us through the fire. We'll handle the burning. 3 days later, the largest armada ever mustered by the Accord crossed into enemy space. At its heart, 6 Terran dreadnoughts formed a moving wall of firepower. Surrounding them, hundreds of transport and support ships moved in tight coordination. The strategy was risky, but clear. Breach the outer swarm perimeter, reach the spawning world, extract samples, and escape. On the Virion's bridge, Voss stared at the flashing alert. Enemy contacts, fast, numerous, closing in. All units, prepare for engagement, he commanded. Accord vessels, pull to minimum combat radius. This next part's on us. The human ships shifted formation, weapon arrays powering up in synchronized rhythm. The void screamed as the swarm rose to meet them. Thousands of smaller swarm entities broke off, encircling the human fleet in a deadly web. They've never organized like this before, Lieutenant Maddox said, scanning tactical feeds. They're learning formation warfare. Then we adapt faster, Voss replied. Initiate delta split. Focus fire on densest clusters. The Terran ships scattered with surgical precision, each banking into divergent assault vectors. Their cannons roared, cutting momentary corridors through the organic onslaught. Main battery charging, called the weapons officer. Target core node and fire, Voss commanded. The Virion quaked as its primary cannon lit up the void, a blinding lance of energy tearing through the swarm's heart. The beam vaporized thousands, leaving a scorched vacuum in its wake. The rest of the fleet joined the barrage, carving a brutal path through the biological storm. The battle lasted 6 relentless hours. 2 Earth vessels were lost, overrun, their crews evacuated by Accord transports in harrowing escapes. But the line held. The fleet broke through. We're above the target world, Voss said to Mirren's team. You have 1 hour. The Solace plunged into the atmosphere, cloaked in fighter escort. Below them lay horror, an entire planet consumed, transformed into a single pulsating mass. Once oceans, now flesh. Once mountains, now hive. This whole world is alive, whispered one of the scientists. Mirren moved fast, collecting genetic samples from critical zones. These are Genesis nodes, she said, the origin points for all replication units. If we can design something to collapse these specifically, before she could finish, the ground ruptured. From the living crust, new horrors emerged, larger, armored, relentless. Contacts. Unknown class, shouted the lead guard. Protect the samples. Mirren ordered as the security team formed a perimeter. The retreat unraveled into chaos. 2 researchers were lost in seconds. Mirren sprinted under cover fire, carrying the sample case close to her chest. She boarded the ship just as the swarm overtook the landing zone. High above, Voss issued the gravest order of his life. Deploy Nova-class warheads. Full saturation, target central hive veins. From orbit, the sky rained fire. Fusion warheads descended, igniting across the creature world surface. The chain detonations flared like suns, flashes that scorched the heavens. Status. General Thane's voice buzzed over comms. Voss stared at the readouts. We hit them hard, but they're already regenerating. In the background, Mirren held her case tightly, eyes fierce. It's enough. I have what I need. As the fleet pulled away, Voss looked back at the burning world, scored, but not destroyed. For the first time, humanity had landed a true blow. But the cost was staggering. Hundreds of soldiers gone and 2 irreplaceable warships. We won't get another shot like that, Voss told Thane quietly. If Mirren's next weapon doesn't work, we're out of time. Inside Earth's Strategic Command, tension grew by the hour. The Silent Verge, the Accord's flagship, had never felt more claustrophobic. Delegates from 17 species stood in a tight ring around the central command sphere, watching in collective dread as a crimson tide advanced on the holomap, representing the ever-expanding reach of the swarm. "We bought ourselves 3 weeks," Voss said quietly, exhaustion bleeding through every word. Mirren's enhanced strain worked for a moment, but they've mutated again. The new variant is completely immune. On Voithelos, his normally luminescent skin, now a pallid gray, lowered his gaze. "Then we are finished. The Accord has endured for 3 millennia. Now we face erasure." No one spoke. Silence pressed like gravity. 6 weeks of attrition had cost humanity nearly a third of its deployed forces. The Accord had lost 11 colonies, billions of lives either extinguished or displaced. Every victory was fleeting. Every defeat carved permanent scars. "Not yet," said Mirren, stepping forward. Her lab coat was stained, her posture brittle from sleepless nights. "I've been studying their energy attraction patterns. They follow heat, thermal emissions. That's how they locate fertile worlds." Voss lifted his head. "We already know that." "Yes," Mirren replied, "but I'm thinking on a cosmic scale." She tapped the console. A colossal gas giant materialized in the display, swirling storms of red and gold. "This is Cavros, edge of Accord territory, primarily hydrogen and helium, prime fusion material." Elder Glim pulsed with static light. "What are you implying?" Mirren exhaled slowly. "We turn Cavros into a fusion trap, trigger a chain reaction, a controlled ignition. The thermal output will mimic a forming star. The swarm won't resist." Murmurs rippled through the chamber. "You want to detonate a planet?" The Los asked, voice thin with disbelief. "Not detonate," Mirren clarified. "Ignite. Lure them to Cavros, then collapse the planetary core. We simulate a miniature supernova. Enough energy to incinerate everything within half a light year." Realization dawned on Voss. A false star to lure them, and a firestorm to end them. The room erupted. Delegates shouted in panic. Fear, ethics, and survival collided in chaos. "This is sacrilege." Glim's voice rose above the din. "Cavros has moons with observatories. 3 nearby systems hold developing ecologies. We destroy everything." Voss stepped forward, his voice raw with weeks of loss. "In 15 days, the swarm reaches your capitals. How many more must die while you hold onto rules your enemy laughs at?" General Thane's hologram flickered to life. "Every tactic has failed. This may be the final lever we can pull." The Los moved to the center, lifting his arms. The room fell silent. "I have seen humans bleed for strangers, sacrifice for our survival. We asked for saviors," his voice trembled, "but we found fire. Now we must choose, burn with them, or be consumed. Their ways unsettle us," the Los said quietly, "but their sacrifice is undeniable." He turned to Glim, light dimmed within the Elder's crystalline core. "We must weigh Dr. Mirren's plan." For 6 tense hours, the chamber became a storm of voices. Accord scientists pored over projections, chasing alternatives that didn't exist. None came. Aboard the Virion, Mirren monitored the simulations. Dozens of variables danced across her screen, each one a pivot point between success and oblivion. "The hardest part is timing," she told Voss. "Someone has to trigger the core detonation manually. The radiation levels will block remote activation." Voss stared at the ops brief. "It's a one-way mission. There's a narrow escape window," she added, hopeful but not deluded. Voss closed the file. "I'll lead the team." Mirren froze. "Commander, no debate," he said firmly. "This is our one shot. I'll take it. I won't order someone else to die." The plan moved into final phase. The swarm, almost as if aware of the bait, began to divert. Their march toward the Accord's heart slowed. Tendrils of the enemy now arced toward Cavros. "It's working," Mirren whispered, eyes fixed on the sensors. "They're converging." Voss assembled his volunteers, 15 men and women, chosen not by rank, but by resolve. They boarded the insertion craft, compact, fast, and armed for one mission only. Envoy Delos met them at the launch bay. "Your willingness, your intent to die, so others may live. We have no word for it in our lexicon." Voss offered a tired half-smile. "We call it courage, Envoy. It's what Deathworlders do." The stealth vessel Firewake dove toward Cavros. Outside the reinforced viewports, the planet's atmosphere seethed, a monstrous swirl of hydrogen storms and electrical chaos. But it wasn't the planet that stole their breath. The void around it pulsed with life. Billions of swarm entities drifted in orbit, drawn by the heat signature Mirren had engineered. The trap had sprung. Final descent. Lieutenant Cell Adams reported from the helm. Her voice was steady, hands dancing over controls even as reality closed in. Target altitude in 5. Voss stood and addressed his team. "We'll have 30 minutes from deployment to get out of the blast zone. No second tries. No rescue." He paused, locking eyes with each of them. "If we succeed, the galaxy breathes again. If we fail, there won't be anyone left to mourn us." No one spoke of survival. They'd all read the odds. The Firewake pierced Cavros's cloud barrier, descending into the storm-racked upper layers. Lightning crackled like veins of molten silver. Giant wind shear currents rocked the craft, but it held. The swarm drifted all around, oblivious for now. At the calculated depth, the team began releasing the fusion catalysts, devices designed to ignite a world. The fusion seed embedded itself in Cavros's core. Primary ignition node planted. The system's tech reported. Warm-up sequence initializing. Voss checked the countdown. 25 minutes to get clear. Move. They turned back toward the Firewake, and the sky broke open. A rogue cyclone, massive and unpredicted, crashed through the upper atmosphere. The ship shuddered violently. Lights dimmed. Sirens howled. Engine 2 offline. Adams shouted, "We're dropping fast." Voss lunged to the engineering console, eyes darting over status readouts. "Can we break orbit on one engine?" The chief engineer didn't answer. He didn't have to. His stricken expression said it all. Not with everyone aboard. The silence in the cabin said the rest. Without hesitation, Voss made the call. "Cut crew to minimum. 5 stay. Everyone else to the escape pods." As the others froze, he continued, voice ironclad. "That's an order. The pods have enough thrust to make it clear. We don't." The argument was brief, but raw. One shouted. Another wept. Then, one by one, 9 team members filed into the pods. The final hatch hissed shut. Voss remained with Adams, the engineer, and 2 others. Their task was now a single thread. Keep the ship alive long enough for the ignition to succeed. 10 minutes to detonation, called the engineer. Above them, the escape pods cleared the storm line, just as the swarm reacted. They noticed. Dozens of clusters peeled away from orbit, streaking toward the fleeing capsules. "They're chasing the pods," Adams said, stunned. "They've taken the bait." Voss opened a secure transmission. "Command, this is Voss. Our position is exposed. Initiate Operation Starfall. Confirm all fleets in fallback range." From orbit, Accord and Terran command ships held their breath. On every sensor, Cavros now radiated extreme heat signatures, exactly as planned. "They're converging," Mirren whispered, watching the display. "Catalyst is stable." Delos and Glim stood silently beside her, witnessing a sacrifice their worlds had never imagined possible. On board the Firewake, the last crew members fought to keep the power stable. Screens flickered. Systems groaned. 2 minutes, shouted the engineer. Voss activated a final open channel. To all vessels, this is Commander Dorian Voss. The ignition core is live and stable. Prepare for final detonation." He paused, letting silence fill the line. "It's been an honor, human or Accord. Whatever comes next, know this: we stood together and refused to vanish quietly." 1 minute left. Then an alert. A miracle. The fail-safes had rerouted auxiliary power. The damaged engine coughed, sparked, and roared. "We have thrust." Atoms yelled, climbing hard. The fire wake lurched upward, engines screaming against gravity's grip. Below, the core blazed. The atmosphere ignited in a wave of white fire. Hydrogen and helium collapsed inward. Pressure spiked beyond calculation. Behind them, the catalyst reached ignition threshold. The world began to burn. The ignition triggered. Cavros burned. For a single, searing instant, a new sun bloomed across Accord space, an artificial star born of desperation. The thermal shock wave surged outward at near light speed, obliterating everything in its reach. In that blinding pulse, 90% of the swarm was incinerated. Entire clusters vanished in silence, consumed by the very heat that had lured them. 3 days later, a miracle emerged. A fractured escape capsule was recovered adrift by a Border Patrol frigate. Inside, barely clinging to life, were Commander Voss and Lieutenant Sel Adams, the only survivors of the Firewake's final flight. 1 month passed. In the high rotunda of the Accord conclave, humanity stood not as strangers, but as saviors. Ornate banners hung from the vaulted walls. Species from across the stars gathered in solemn silence. Envoy Delos stepped forward. For 3,000 years, we believed peace alone defined progress. That force was a relic of primitive minds. But the swarm showed us otherwise. He turned to Voss, his uniform still bearing scorch marks from a world that no longer existed. They came not seeking war, but bearing the strength we lacked. They did not fight for conquest, but for us. Beside him, Elder Glim pulsed a radiant cascade of color. Today, the Accord extends to Earth a place not just among our worlds, but above them. You will not join as members, but as defenders, a role only your kind can fulfill. Voss stood shoulder to shoulder with Mirren and the remaining Terran delegation. He bowed, slow and deliberate. "Earth accepts, and we thank you for your trust and for the chance to grow beside you. May your wisdom guide our strength." Across 100 worlds, monuments rose in steel and stone, tributes to the Terran lives lost in the battle against annihilation. Every name etched, every sacrifice remembered. On Earth, the revelation shook civilization to its core. Humanity was not alone in the universe, and they had already saved it. In the years that followed, the last remnants of the swarm were hunted and destroyed. The Accord, once pacifist by design, began to form its own planetary defense forces, built under Terran guidance. And far beyond the rim of known space, in a quiet orbit around a dead world, a warning beacon was planted. It pulsed a simple message into the dark, a record of the threat that once consumed galaxies and the brutal creatures who stopped it. Years later, when asked to speak about those days, Voss would simply say, "They feared our world, called us monsters born from chaos and pain. Then the stars needed monsters to stand and fight." He looked out over the stars, and instead they found friends. If that story lit a fire in you, don't let it fade. Subscribe for more tales where humanity stands against the impossible. Like the video if you believe monsters can be heroes. And let me know in the comments, would you have answered the call?